I will let you know this meeting is being recorded. That way, those of us that couldn't be here can have access to the same information that you'll be hearing tonight. If you don't want to be recorded, please keep your microphone and camera turned off. The recording will be made available on the project website, boston.gov/Overlook Park, along with other project updates. I'm going to be putting that in the chat right now, so you'll be able to have access to that. Thanks to everyone for joining us tonight. My name is Max Sell. I'm the project manager from Boston Parks and Recreation, responsible for the improvement project at Fidelis Way. Got a few general meeting items to mention before our presentation starts, so thank you for your patience as we move through this. Next slide, please. First, I ask that everyone here conducts themselves respectfully. We're here to share our own ideas and experiences just as much as we are to hear the ideas and experiences of our neighbors. Everyone here is assured of their right to share comments, ask questions, and receive a response in kind. Please be aware that our time is limited and try to keep your questions and comments brief. That way we can answer as many of them as possible tonight. If you've already asked a question, please let others have time to speak before you take another turn. And if you have questions afterwards or would like to discuss something further, please send me an email. That is max.sell@boston.gov. And that one I have actually put in the chat just now. Next slide, please. Please keep your cameras and microphones turned off during the presentation. We'll use the chat feature for any questions that may come up during the meeting, and we'll have them answered during the Q&A session. Please use the raised hand feature, and you'll be given permission when called on to speak. Next slide, please. And this is one final disclaimer that the meeting is being recorded. Next slide. So tonight we're going to be speaking about Fidelis Way Park. Our designers have been taking a careful look, performing site analysis over the past few weeks, and they're eager to present their findings with you tonight. We're going to introduce the project team now. As I mentioned, my name is Max Sell. I'm the project manager here at Boston Parks and Recreation. Our outreach coordinator is Michael McMillan. The Office of Neighborhood Services coordinator for this park is Kevin Laharu. We're working with Brown, Richards, and Rowe, and our designers are Samantha Morrow and Adrian Emmerich, and the principal is David Anders. Next slide, please. We'd also like to make a special thanks to Boston Children's Hospital. They're committing some funding towards the construction of a ramp at Monastery Path. So as I mentioned, our project kind of just got going in the spring. We are currently at our first community meeting and we'll be conducting sort of the engagement process over the next few months. That will likely roll through summer into the fall, when our design team will start schematic design based on that community feedback. And eventually we'll have those designs put out for bid for construction. That's a little further down the line. Right now, we're just kind of looking to hold community meetings and have drawings completed sometime around the end of the year. Next slide, please. So how do we make decisions about what is implemented in the park? Now, we have to consider a lot of factors when we do decide to make changes to any city park. We have to consider the priorities of the city of Boston, what the Parks Department is after in terms of creating inventory assets, increasing green space, that sort of thing, our prerogative. We have to consider safety guidelines, and we also consider community input. Now that means in addition to meetings such as the one tonight, that input comes in the way of seeing people on site or having messages or conversations about the park outside of these formal meetings. So please know that it is not limited to just the information shared and exchanged here tonight. Next slide, please. So some of those priorities that I mentioned from the city of Boston that are especially pertinent in this park will be expanding walkable access to the parks. Right now, there's only one ADA accessible entrance to the park, and the aim is to create another. Next slide, please. We, of course, at Parks are always driven and motivated by an effort to make parks accessible and available to everyone. And we really stress the importance of meaningful community engagement. And that's why we're interested in hearing from you tonight. So next slide, please. Okay, great. Well, with that, I'm going to hand it over to Samantha Morrow with our design team. And Samantha, you have our attention.
All right. Well, as Max mentioned, I'm Samantha Morrow. I'm with Brown, Richardson, and Rowe. We are the landscape architects hired to work on the project. And I'll be working with Adrian tonight, who you'll also hear from shortly. So starting off, when we start looking at site analysis for a site, one of the first aspects we start looking into is the historical analysis, which sort of helps us inform design decisions, and it shapes projects to be contextually sensitive. So it also helps us provide a deeper understanding of the site's evolution over time, including the past uses, events, changes, and influences. So it provides us with context. It also helps us to understand any cultural and historical significance, which will help lead to designs that hopefully honor the site's past and reflect the community identity. And then lastly, it helps us identify opportunities and constraints by examining the different historic aspects so we can identify if there are elements we need to preserve, such as structures or walkways, or in this case at Fidelis, like significant tree canopy. So this first map you'll see is from 1925. What we found when we first started diving into this historical analysis was that this park didn't exist until 1975. So prior to its renovation on this map, you can sort of see in the center is Commonwealth Ave, and then highlighted in green is that approximate location of where Fidelis Way Park is today. What we found interesting about this map is that the eastern side of Commonwealth Ave is heavily developed, but on the western side where the park is now is fairly undeveloped, open space land. You can see the monastery building still existing, and then that land itself was back then even owned by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So next slide. So that brings us to this next slide where we have an image from 1935, which sort of illustrates what we saw on that previous map. Again, we have Commonwealth Ave kind of snaking through the top there, and you can see that eastern side, which is developed, where on that western side, highlighted in green again, where the park is that open space, sort of undeveloped land. And then in the foreground of this image, you have Brighton High School and you have St. Gabriel's Monastery. Next slide. So that brings us to 1975, which is when the park was constructed. So for those of you here who are familiar with the park, you'll see that this has not really changed much from the original design, and today's park design elements really remain in the same orientation as shown in the plan above. So the initial design of the park included those basketball courts, which you see today, the plaza area, and then a little tot lot playground with lawns surrounding either side, and then walkways surrounding all of it. In that tot lot area, there was a water play feature. And we also noticed in this plan that a lot of the trees that you still see today surrounding those walkways were planted during this design. Another thing we noted when looking at these plans from 1975 was that there was a lot of drainage infrastructure installed, so various drains and manholes throughout the park. So for us, we thought it would be important to make sure that all that is functioning properly in the next steps. So next slide. So again, on the left, we have sort of a zoom in image of those plans from 1975. And then on the right, this is showing the next time the park was renovated in 1993. So that design really was just focused on the renovation of the play equipment itself. It removed that water play unit and then it put in new play equipment, which is also the same play equipment you see out there today. They also added those large tulip trees that are surrounding the playground today were planted during this 93 redesign. And then they also installed some new water and drain lines. But other than that, in 93, that was kind of all that really happened. So the rest of the design of the park and its elements really remain mostly unchanged. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to Adrian, who actually lives locally to the park, so she can talk about the neighborhood context.
Thank you, Sam. So to start off, before we talk about the park, we're going to talk a little bit about the neighborhood around it. And we're going to start just with a slide to help orient ourselves. So this Fidelis Way Park is adjacent to Commonwealth Ave, located between Washington Street and Warren Street. If you haven't been to the park, you might not have seen the park because it does not have any street frontage. But there are a lot of landmarks around it. To the north of it, labeled as number 1 on this slide, is Brighton Marine Health Center. Then to the south of the park is the Boston Housing Authority Commonwealth Development. To the left at number 3 is Overlook Apartments, which used to be St. Gabriel's Monastery. Number 4 on the corner is the former St. Elizabeth's Hospital, which is now Boston Medical Center Brighton. And then at number 5 is Brighton High School. So people are probably familiar with this block in this area, and then Fidelis Way Park is right in the center of it. So when we started to study this neighborhood, one thing we really noticed is the density of community institutions around this park. And this is something I kind of touched on in the previous slide also. But within a 5-minute walking distance from the park, you have 3 different hospitals or health centers, 3 schools, and of course the BHA Commonwealth Development. And then getting a little farther into the less than 10-minute radius, you have some religious institutions, another health center, the Boston Public Library Brighton, and then the BCYF Jackson Man Community Center. So our takeaway from this slide is that this is an area that's bringing a lot of people in. It's probably not just going to be neighborhood residents using this park, but it might also be people who are attending school here, who are working here, maybe who are coming here for a medical appointment. So in addition to all of these community institutions, there are also some other parks and open space. There are actually no other parks within a 5-minute walking radius, but there are 4 that I'm going to focus on that are in the 10-minute walking radius. So right at the edge of that 10-minute radius, we have Brighton Common, which is really like a long space with a stage and an amphitheater, kind of an event space. Down here, number 3 is Joyce Playground, which in its amenities is sort of similar to what's offered at Fidelis Way Park. You have a playground, sports courts, a water play feature, and some public art. Down here, number 6, Brian Honan Park is very small, and it's just offering a lawn and seating. And then number 5, Ringer Park, this is right outside the 5-minute walking radius, and is kind of the largest park in this area. So it's offering sport courts, a playground, and then kind of an urban wild area. And I also wanted to note that the Chestnut Hill Reservoir, which is a much larger park with a reservoir to walk around, is 10 minutes from this via public transportation. So speaking of transportation, our last piece of neighborhood context is transportation and how people are getting to this park. The park can be accessed on either the 57 or 65 bus routes, as well as the B line of the Green Line. So if you are taking the 57 bus, you get off on Cambridge Street, walk down Warren Street, and then use a set of stairs to enter the park. If you're taking the 65 bus, you'll get up on Washington Street, walk on Pamela Donovan Road, which takes you through this Overlook Apartments, and then walk down some stairs to get into the park. And then from either Washington Street or Warren Street stop on the Green Line, you could walk up some stairs from Commonwealth Avenue. So if you want ADA access to the park, or if you are driving to the park, you would access it via Fidelis Way, which goes through the Commonwealth development. It would take you up to the parking lot, which is at the southeast corner of the site, and then that is where the ADA access is. And I'll turn it back over to Sam.
All right, so now we're going to move into more site-specific site analysis. So on the next slide, we're zooming into the park again. So we have that green dash outline, sort of outlining the approximate limits of Fidelis Way Park. And then we're showing in those magenta arrows, those various entries into the park that Adrian started to touch on. So starting from Warren Street at that bubble 1, we have a set of stairs leading up to the park, which go between Brighton High School and Brighton Marine Center as part of Monastery Path. And then you enter into the park where that magenta arrow is showing. Next, from Commonwealth Ave at the second bubble, we have another set of stairs that's sandwiched between 2 large condominium complexes and apartment complexes. So these stairs will lead you up into Fidelis Way Park's parking lot to the ADA accessible entry here. The site can also be accessed at bubble 3, which is a set of stairs from Jet Court, which connects to the BHA Commonwealth development. And then the last entry at bubble 4 is from Pamela Donovan Road, which connects users from Washington Street. And again, it's another set of stairs leading to what is called Monastery Path, and then you enter into the park at the magenta arrow. So next slide. I just wanted to zoom in since those photos are a little tiny on the last slide of more images of those areas. So at photo 1, we have the stairs leading from Warren Street along Monastery Path through the park. Photo 2 is those stairs from Commonwealth Ave between the 2 housing developments. Photo 3 is another image of the stairway leading to Jet Court. So this image is taken at the bottom of the stairs, standing at the plaza area in the park, and then looking up at BHA Commonwealth development. And then the last photo is the top of the stairs at Monastery Path, connecting from Pamela Donovan Road and Washington Street that leads down into the park. So next slide. So this next slide is showing our analysis of the site in terms of those various site zones, entries, and circulation. So as you can see on this map, we have those magenta arrows again that was indicating those entrances we just discussed on the previous slide. Then this dash gray line around the park shows the exact park parcel boundary, so the property boundary for the park. The green circles are indicating the existing trees on site. So you can see from this, there's a lot of existing tree canopy and there's some great wooded areas on site. And then moving from left to right to talk about the different site zones, we have an open lawn area that's adjacent to Monastery Path. This lawn sort of has a flatter slope at the top, and then it steepens as you move north towards Brighton High School. And then adjacent to this lawn, there's another pathway which runs between the lawn and the 2 sport courts. The pathway is paved and accessible until you get to the concrete steps shown in that dark blue dashed line. Next, in blue is the sport court, which includes 2 basketball courts. There's another paved pathway between these, which runs between the sport court and the playground. That's connecting what I'm going to refer to for the rest of the presentation as the upper and lower pathways. And then the playground shown here in purple. It's surrounded by some large tulip trees and grassy berms. And then centrally located between that is that plaza area with those stairs leading to Jet Court. And on either side, or on the right side of the playground, is another large lawn area that's surrounded by those 2 upper and lower pathways, which lead to the parking area. And so also on this map, in those orange dash lines, we noticed there's a couple turnarounds in the pathway. So to us, that indicated that maintenance vehicles are accessing the upper and lower pathway and then turning around at those 2 turnarounds closer to Monastery Path. We're also showing the circulation for vehicular entry. So the only way if you're arriving by car to the park to enter is entering from Jet Court, and you're entering that parking lot at that blue dashed line where you can then park your car and then enter the park accessibly. So next slide. So these next few slides, I'm going to show some enlarged images of those amenities we just discussed in plan view. The top left image is showing the playground equipment, which was installed during that renovation in 1993. From this image, you can see that the playground surfacing consists of wood chip mulch and then some mounded sort of poured-in-place rubberized surfacing that's leading to play equipment platform entry points. There's then a concrete curb and low seat wall that form the edge of the playground area, which is indicative of that first design we saw in 1975, that same layout. And between that is that red painted paved surface, which in the center of that is where that spray unit used to be, which is now a dry well drain. And then moving clockwise, the next image shows one of the swing sets. So we did notice that the play equipment, you do have a lot of swings at the park. So that one has 4 toddler seats. And then there's another set of swings with 4 belt seats for older children. Again, you can see that surfacing with the wood chip mulch and then the poured-in-place rubberized surfacing. So when we look at that, we can see that that's really not a universally accessible surface at the moment, just because the variations in the grade change between that rubberized surfacing and then the wood chip mulch. The wood chip mulch is also not the easiest to navigate if a user's in a wheelchair. So moving clockwise again to the photo below is just a zoomed out photo of that play equipment. To us, it looks like, it's a fresh coat of paint, so it's very brightly colored. It's sort of that traditional post and platform style play equipment. And you can also see in this image, although there aren't leaves on it in that image, but some of those large canopy trees, we've been talking about those tulip trees. And then the last image on the bottom left is just illustrating some of those existing site furnishings at the plaza area. So you can see a trash receptacle, bench, and then there's also a tree pit with a tree that was planted in 1975. So next slide. These images are focusing on the basketball court area. So that first image on the top left is showing the stair entry into the courts and the surrounding cobble edge. Adjacent to that, moving clockwise, is another look at that cobble edge surrounding the basketball court. That's sort of taken from the upper walkway looking down towards the lower walkway. We did notice on site that that cobble edge is very steep in some areas. And then moving clockwise is an image of the existing basketball backboards, which appear to be the True Balance acrylic backboards, which seem to be in fairly good condition. And then the bottom left is a photograph of the existing basketball courts. So the colored seal coat looks relatively new and in good condition from our assessment. So next slide. And then these last images are highlighting the open space and lawn areas that we talked about in those site zones. So the top left is the lawn area located between the parking lot and the playground. This lawn area is sort of steep from the parking lot, and then it levels out for a bit before it drops off again to meet that lower pathway. Moving clockwise, this is another shot of that same lawn area, but we're looking towards the playground. So you can see some of those grassy berms and canopy trees we mentioned. And again, it's sort of flat around the playground, and then it drops off again towards the lower walkway. Below that image is the other lawn area, which is located between Monastery Path and the basketball court, looking towards Brighton High School. So you can see in this image, it's a fairly large lawn area. It's mostly flat, which is great. And then it, you can't really see it in this image, but it drops off again towards that lower path. And then the last image is just showing the grassy sloped lawn from the BHA Commonwealth development. And it's leading down to the upper walkway where this photograph was taken. And we wanted to highlight these images specifically because the park does have a lot of existing mature tree canopy, and it also has large passive open space and lawn areas with varying degrees of slope. And I think along with this, it also helps to highlight how the park itself has sort of been cut into a hillside to fit in and have level parts. So just as a result of that, we're dealing with a lot of varying slope on the site, and because just of how water works and how water wants to move from high to low, we're going to have a lot of water moving across the site and existing drainage patterns that we need to evaluate. So next slide. So that brings us to our last slide where we're looking at that existing slope and drainage in the park. So these red dashed lines are showing where the pathways are not meeting ADA accessibility standards, or they're just excessively steep. And when I say ADA accessibility standards, ADA requires that walkways slope under 5%. So that means for every 1 foot of vertical change over 20 feet of horizontal change. If a pathway is going to exceed that slope, you can install a ramped walkway, which has a max slope of 8.3%, which would be 1 foot of vertical change over 12 feet. And those ramp structures have different requirements for then handrails and landings and frequency of landings. So just to give an overview of that. So when we looked at the park after we received the survey, we noted that really that only accessible walkway is from that parking lot along the upper walkway. And it does bring users to the playground, to the plaza area, to the sport courts, but that lower walkway is really not accessible. We also noted that the walkway between the playground and the sport courts, after you meet the edge of the playground, starts to drop off relatively steeply and again is not accessible. And then lastly is that monastery path, which we mentioned earlier, which again is not an accessible walkway. It already wouldn't be considered accessible because there are stairs throughout it, but the ramped walkway between the stairs is also exceeding 5%, and then not meeting those landing requirements that I talked about previously. So again, we're dealing with a lot of grade change here, a lot of slope, and as a result of that, we do have some issues with existing draining patterns on site. We noted on the upper walkway, there is some indication that puddling is occurring and water is maybe not moving off of the paved surfaces as desired. And then also on the lower walkway, we have another image where there's a large washout area, so indicating that water's puddling here, sediment is collecting. So again, things we want to just address when we look at the park renovations. So that kind of ends our analysis of the site and quantitative data that we've collected, which brings us to the next I think, most important section, which is the listening and discussion, so we can kind of get that qualitative data from you all and hear how you use the park and, you know, what you'd like to see in terms of improvements so that we make sure whatever we deliver is exactly what the community is looking for. And I'll hand it off to Max with that.
Thanks so much, Samantha and Adrian. We're going to start our listening and discussion section in just a second here. I just want to remind everyone to conduct themselves respectfully. We're going to listen to others as well as share our own experiences, and we're going to wait our turn if someone hasn't had a chance to speak. So with that, why don't we advance the slide to the list of questions? I think we can just start from the top here. What brings you all to the park? Feel free to raise your hand and we'll ask to unmute you. Thank you, Barbara.
I go to the park for free green space. I used to be a regular user of Ringer Park, and of course the Hilltop Park up on Summit Avenue. But over the years, these parks have been they've been used for other purposes or dedicated purposes. Now they're tennis courts, the basketball courts, they're baseball diamonds, et cetera, et cetera. For me, a park experience is just to be able to enjoy free green space. Thanks.
Thank you, Barbara. I see Natalie, you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you. So thank you for the presentation. So I personally use the park both to walk my dog, and also like travel through the park to go from where I live at 1501 to the monastery area or to the medical places you mentioned.
Thank you. What about park safety? This is usually a huge concern in a lot of different parks, so just want to know how you feel when you're in the park. Let's see, I see Natalie, you have your hand up.
Sure. So I think in general, in the main area of the park, I feel relatively safe. I mean, it kind of depends on the time of the day, but I feel extremely unsafe on the eastern side of the park, the part that is between Brighton Marine and the Nova apartment, because at that spot, there is a lot of people that gather and do drugs and leave chairs, and it's very, very unsafe at night, aside from not lit, in that little like carved out canopy area. Sorry.
Oh, no, please. Thank you very much. I see a message in the comments that says worried about what's in grass, don't feel comfortable sitting on the grass. If you would like to expand on that, I'd love to hear more. Zoom user. But if you don't feel like talking, that is quite all right. You can continue to leave messages in the chat or feel free to email me later. I think for kind of these other points, we can just sort of open up the floor, and I just want to hear a little bit more about, what brings you to the park. Adrian, I know, is a neighbor, and might have some experiences to share as well. But yeah, I'd just kind of like to hear a little bit more from you all. Hi, Dan, I see you have your hand up. Dan, would you take yourself off mute, please?
Thank you very much. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you for the refurbishing of Overlook Park. It's a great park, and my family grew up in Fidelis Way. I'm a director of community government relations at Brighton Marine, so we're very interested in the park. I was wondering if the historical history of Fidelis Way, where it was originally for veterans, Korean War veterans, and then Brighton Marine's history, and then some of the Hero Square that are around there, particularly Michael Burns, who who died in the Vietnam conflict. Is there any consideration for military or veteran memorials or any statues? And that's one question. And then second, really proud of the community development agreement that opened up an entrance to Commonwealth Ave and the carriage road. And I was wondering if that area could be beautified and more signage, where there's been a lot of construction on the carriage road with 1515 Com Ave, which abuts Fidelis and the park. So just curious, in that hillside is really not attractive that runs between the carriage road and Com Ave. I know, and if there was any, plan with the MBTA to kind of add an entrance and a crosswalk across Com Ave from the apartments across the street that would open up and access Overlook Park as well. Thank you for your considerations.
Thanks, Dan. I don't know about any dedications that are charted to occur in this park, but that is something I may need to ask a more senior PM about.
Would you like me to jump in, Max, on that?
Would you please, Lauren? Thank you.
So typically when something with memorial with veterans is requested or asked about, we would connect with the Veterans Commission, and the Parks Department has a really great relationship with them. So I appreciate you bringing that up, and it's something we can bring up with them, and then Max can share at a future meeting how those conversations went.
Thank you, Lauren.
Absolutely. Do you want me to jump in on the one about the crosswalk as well?
Oh, sure, please.
Okay. So I also wanted to share that there is an initiative that Boston Parks has, and I don't know this specific question with the MBTA and how they're specifically related with the crosswalk, but in terms of access into parks, we have a great partnership with the Public Works Department, and they have a program which is safe access to parks. And so a lot of times when we're doing these park projects, we do coordinate with the streets team and with Public Works in terms of trying to make sure while we're working on the park that if there are ways to increase safety and good access into the parks, that we can do that as well. So we can add that to our list for checking in with them too.
Thank you, Lauren. Barrett, I see you have your hand up.
Hi there. Yeah, my name is Barrett Gadati. I live just up the hill from the park, and I am there just about every day with my 2.5-year-old son. So I'm very grateful that it exists. I will also say that the current play equipment is not well suited for young children, and so having slightly more options beyond just the swings that are good for, the under threes would be really, really wonderful. I appreciated the comment about the wood chips and accessibility. They get stuck in his shoes, and so I'm like running around after him trying to pull wood chips out of his shoes a lot. And then I also really appreciated the comment about ADA accessibility, because we're often in a stroller and or I'm just like carrying him down many flights of stairs and then back up again. So yeah, I appreciate those comments. I will say I was really excited, and I've spent a lot of time sitting on the side of that park looking at what should be a splash pad and hoping that someday it becomes a splash pad again, because especially as our climate gets warmer and the neighborhood grows, access to more of those water-based play activities will be really helpful for little kids. I will say, just from like my own user experience of local parks, the splash pad at Joyce Playground is like swamped with kids all the time. And that's basically the closest thing to us that's stroller accessible, that's a play activity that's in the water. And there can be 70, 80, sometimes 90 kids there on a hot afternoon, like huge number of kids. So I just think that that would be a great draw for a lot of the families in the neighborhood if that were something that were prioritized. And yeah, so I was really excited, and I'm grateful that you guys posted signs about this in local neighborhood as well, because I wouldn't have known about the community meeting otherwise. So thanks, everyone. I have to go because I'm prepping toddler dinner, but I just wanted to put in my 2 cents. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Barrett.
Yeah.
Liz, I see you have your hand up. Let's see, did I manage to ask you to unmute?
Councilor Braden, are you able to unmute?
Okay. If you'd raise your hand again, we'll come back. I think we're going to go to Natalie.
Thank you. So again, like this park is really nice, and it's really nice right now to have all those activities. So thank you so much. And same, I'm very excited about any changes you do. One thing that I had put in the chat, and I know it's a little complex, and I don't know if you're aware, but the problem is the accessibility to the park, because this is to me like the #1 problem. And I think, I don't know if you realize, but up to recently, the vast majority of the people would actually go illegally through the backside of 1501 Ave, because this is the shortest distance from the Warren Street T station, and it is still happening to this day. So that's where I personally live, at 1501, and we just got our fence totally destroyed like last few weeks again. We already replaced it like 4 times, in the last few years. And what it is it's really highlighting the fact that there is a problem in terms of accessibility. And even though I really am very happy with the new access, the one you call access 2 in your SAT analysis, the problem, as some people put it in the chat, is that the slope on Comab is so steep that people are not walking all the way to now take the steps even more to then get there. And I think the challenge is for all the people that live a little downhill is they don't have access. So when I was listening to Dan just a few minutes ago, I was wondering, like, I'm not sure who has the land for Brighton Marine, but would there be a way, since there is so much area between the Brighton Marine that has a direct access to the tree, to actually make another entrance that could potentially be accessible, because you have so much that you could do cross slope and you'd have very high length. But even if you can't do an ADA one there, to have another access there would also give you access to the bottom part, would also prevent people from illegally crossing, and would make the park so much more visible, because there is a lot of really good signage on Brighton Marine. I don't know, did you ever guys knew about this problem, and did you consider that?
We've inspected the site along with Bright Marine on their campus a few weeks ago. I know to the west there's a rather large retaining wall, and that a pathway through towards a private property would not be feasible there. I don't think we've explored quite as much to the east yet, but that was not something that was originally in our scope.
Yeah, because that's where people currently come from. So I think that the problem is, I think, even though, like, and I don't want to hijack this, and you guys can study, but the reality is, I bet you that we could do a survey, but maybe at least a third of the people, if not half, come from there. So I think at some point, to not have a proper access is important to be considered, aside from improvement, I would
Yes,
think.
we'll absolutely look at how to improve circulation both within and into the site.
Yeah,
And
I just an
accessibility.
additional. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And Councillor Braden, were you able to unmute?
Yeah, I've finally managed to unmute myself. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us.
Oh yeah, this is wonderful. I'm very excited about upgrading this park, because we have a really significant number of young families at Jetty Park and at Fidelis that desperately need a place to play. The question about, I know Dan Cuddy's here from Bright Marine. When you're up at the park, what looks like an old step, an old pathway down onto the back of the Bright Marine campus. And I know, good fences make good neighbors. So I'm not anticipating that Brighton Marine would be interested in opening that up, but it would mean that folks who are residents at Brighton Marine and their campus would be able to come up the steps and right up into the park as well. I think, having walked over there, and I think I was on crutches at the time, so I wasn't so nimble on my own feet, but I think the one thing that strikes me, going from Warren Street across from Warren Street up through to Fidelis Park, is there's so many steps everywhere you go. Even if you're a wheelchair user, it's impossible. If you're pushing a kid stroller, it's pretty difficult. So I think the accessibility issues are immense here. The other thing is, I don't know, I need to go back, because it all was approved before my time on City Council, was the access. I anticipated that there would be vehicular access from Commonwealth Ave through to the park without going through Jetty Court. And the parking that you mentioned earlier at Jetty Court, I think, is BHA parking for residents of Jetty Court. So I don't think the general public have access to that. And if you do park there, you'll get towed. So, and maybe I'm getting that wrong, but that's.
No, you have that right. There is a parks parking lot there on the right side of the plan, but the other parking around that park is reserved for tenants.
Yeah. So how do you do you come in between 115 and 10? Hang on, I've got my map here in front of me. How do you get in at 1501 Commonwealth? Is there a way to come in there, a vehicular access?
You would drive down Jet Court in between what I'm seeing is units 19 and 21. There's a dumpster there that you kind of sneak around, and that parking lot behind is parks.
Okay, all right. I do think that, with these really increasingly hot days, and I think last year on Juneteenth was a public national holiday and the schools were out. The parks, it was like earlier. I don't think the splash pads were open yet, but even if they were open, there isn't. I think having a splash pad for kids over there is going to be really important. And then also just I'm looking at the community benefits. I know there are some community benefits from the Overlook project for directly, I think, for parks. I'm looking at the list and I'm surprised that there wasn't actually more money allocated to improving the park, but that's something I need to look into myself.
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry,
yeah.
please.
We did get the money from Children's Hospital and we got money for a youth worker fairly recently, but I'm going back 5 or 6 years now to think maybe we should have gotten more money allocated to the park. But I need to go and track that down and see where we're at. Do you have any idea how much money we have?
I don't have the exact figure. I do know one aspect of this park aims to make an ADA accessible route from sorry, it's Washington Street down Monastery Path until that sort of top left point. Beyond that space, that property belongs to Public Works. So we're unable to kind of move from there. But the idea is to make an accessible entry from the top next to Nevins Hills condos down into the park so that entire upper path is accessible.
Yeah, it's pretty steep.
It's, yep.
And then in terms of programming, I think the basketball courts are really important, and just the programming for the kids at Fidelis Way, and families, adults as well. But I think they're really in need of an upgrade. And I don't think anybody's arguing with me about how the park needs to be upgraded. It's all going on a good long time since it's had any investment. So making it, we have hundreds of kids over at Fidelis. So we're hoping that this would be a real. The other issue that I've heard from residents, and I'm sorry there aren't more residents here from the Commonwealth Housing this evening. We didn't have a lot of time to get word out to the Commonwealth community, but just the calling it Overlook Park. I don't know, Dan Cuddy maybe knows a bit more of the history. People feel that you have luxury housing at Overlook, and it's not the Overlook Housing Park. It's a public park for everybody, and I think the folks at Fidelis feel a little excluded from their own park because it's now called Overlook Park.
Absolutely. We do have that, for the record, in Boston Park's inventory as Fidelis Way.
Excellent.
I know you had mentioned some things that Dan Cuddy he and I had a chance to speak about. I'd like to offer him a chance to respond to some of those questions you had. Let me just find where he is. There you are, Dan.
Right there, yeah.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Council Braden. Appreciate it. Yeah, we could open up a conversation on where you would think an entrance would benefit at the park that could be Bright Marine property. I did tour the park with the engineers. I mean, the Bright Marine campus side that abuts Outlook Park, Fidelis Way Park. And we did discuss some of the, you know, landscape and other things, but we are open to conversation on that. And perhaps that entranceway could be a veteran dedication or a veteran memorial area or something that dedicates our military members that, you know, Fidelis Way's history and ours could celebrate, and some of the hero squares that are up there. So we would be open to that discussion. The other thing that I know has happened in the past is because of the access that everyone's discussing, you know, it's a tough park to get the trucks in and out of that small parking area where the dumpster is, where everyone enters. And oftentimes the park isn't upgraded, isn't the lawn isn't mowed, and I've seen it really in bad condition with children up there. And so I just would say that if any accessibility to, you know, keep the park well groomed and so on is really a necessity. And as everyone knows, I didn't want to speak too much on the first time I spoke, but the staircases that go from Warren Street up to St. Gabriel's up to Fidelis is so unkept and so safety hazard. And I wonder if there was any discussion with Boston Public Schools. You know, one of the disappointments is Outlook Park's kind of a small print, and it, you know, parks next to schools, you know, is typically designed to support school programming. I don't really see any of this design related to Brighton High School, you know, which is okay, but I wonder if there was any thought there. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Maybe some of the designers could speak to their points of the sort of neighborhood context. My understanding or interpretation of this site, at least, is it feels very much situated in the neighborhood. And this really feels like it belongs kind of to the neighbors. But if there are kind of more people using this than kind of beyond the immediate adjacencies, like that's something we're certainly curious to know about.
Max, can I jump in on something
Please.
that Dan just said?
Yeah.
I do just want to double check that when Dan was saying that he's not seeing anything in the plan that would directly support Brighton High School, I do just want to clarify this is not a plan. And that's one of the reasons that we're here tonight is to hear what people do want this park to become in the future. So hearing that in terms of that connection, we always like to coordinate with BPS schools. So they definitely will be on our outreach for this project. But the next steps, and just so that everyone knows, so this first meeting is really to hear the community's thoughts, to understand what the desires are, what the concerns are. Then the second meeting that we'll have will be to come back where the designers are going to take everything they heard tonight. They're going to, you know, talk to the school. They're going to talk to a lot of the adjacent neighbors, and they're going to come back with several concepts to say, hey, this is what this park could be. And so at that point, Dan, there should be some things that, you know, do relate to some of those questions with the accessibility, with, you know, BPS connection, all of those things. And then once we get the feedback from that one, we tend to have a final meeting where we come back and we say, this is the proposed concept for what we're thinking of showing or, you know, doing in this park. And did we get it right? Did we hear you guys? Like all of this listening that we're doing, because you guys know this park so much better than we do. And we really want to make sure that, you know, it reflects what you are hoping to get out of the park. So I hope that helps answer that question, Dan, about that connection with BPS, because you're absolutely right. Those connections with schools are crucial.
Thank you, Lauren. I see, Liz, you have your hand up again. Could you, let's see, ask to unmute? Don't know why I'm having so much trouble with you. I think I'm going to pause again and give the floor over to Natalie for a moment.
Got it now.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, another suggestion for engaging with the Commonwealth tenants over there and the families. They will be holding their Unity Day celebration at the Commonwealth Housing on Saturday, what is it, Saturday, August 16th from 12 to 2. So it might be an idea to have a table over there and just get their ideas right from the perspective of families that live right there.
Absolutely. Thank you for mentioning that.
Thank you. So I think like some things of the activities, to answer your question. So I've noticed, and I put that in the chat, especially in the winter when there is snow, the slope is actually pretty cool, and there is a lot of kids that go sledding on the hill. So I don't know if you were aware of it, but that's something that is really well liked, and I even see people from the neighborhood or even farther to come in the winter. So I think regarding the hill. Then I think there is a ton of lawn on both sides. And even though I like it even for my dog, I think it would be nice if there were activities aside from potential splash pad that were maybe such as pickleball. It's becoming more and more popular these days. And, I know you had that on, and it takes quite a bit of room. And then there is a flatness and the accessibility. But I think it would be really cool to have another amenity that could draw a lot of people to the park as well and make it more well known, since there is not that many pickleball courts in that area. There are some in Brookline, but not really in this Alton Brighton area.
Thank you. One thing that we haven't touched on in this meeting is the kind of, what do you call it, the cobblestone swale around the basketball court. I'm curious if anyone has anything to say about that. I haven't seen anything like it before. And if you don't, that's okay too.
This was not an uncommon feature in our parks at one time. A lot of times this was done to help with erosion and to provide a place for people to sit. But I am curious, we have replaced some of these cobble edges in the past with some tiered seating, other things. Do people use that edge to sit on, or do people just avoid that edge? They use it. Okay. Do they like it as it is, Natalie? I see you nodding. Or do you think, terraced seating would be better?
So I think I see people both using it to walk, which I feel could also be a little bit of a trip hazard personally, but I see them doing it, climbing up and down when they play basketball or throwing balls from the basketball court up to the path. I do think that what is really missing in the park right now is there is not that much great seating. So depending on what you do for seating, it also can create like a natural opportunity while also dealing with the slope.
Thank you. I also saw in the chat, someone was mentioning tables with shade as well. So
yeah, it would be great for people to be able to eat there, and picnic. And I think right now it's pretty not present.
Thank you.
it also acts as a ball return for those of us that aren't very good at basketball and miss the hoop.
Would anyone else like to share any questions or comments this evening? Oh, I see Barbara has a hand up. Give me just a moment.
Hi, I live in Commonwealth Elderly, which is part of the Commonwealth Housing, and I would very much like to present or have one of you come and present at our Commonwealth Housing Tenants Association meeting. We meet monthly. I try to encourage quite a few people to attend this evening. I notice I'm the only one here. I think we are the main users of this park. I think the park is opening up to a larger community. I think that's a good thing. However, I think people have a feeling of ownership to it. It was our little secret, not our little secret anymore. And I think this would help segue that. So I'm going to put my email in the chat. If one of you would reach out to me.
Happily, yes. And my email is in the chat as well. If anyone feels like they would like to reach out to me directly, I'd just like to remind you of that.
Thank you.
Yes. Well, thank you all. I'd like to thank you all for taking time out of your schedule to join us tonight. Again, if you have any questions that weren't answered tonight, feel free to email me. And keep an eye on the project webpage. We do update that frequently with both progress updates and new surveys. So that website again is boston.gov/Overlook Park. If you've left your email with me through the Pulse survey, I will be sending you an invitation email to that next survey when it comes. Otherwise, we'll be working with our neighborhood partners to spread awareness about the project in the community. So thank you once again for taking time this evening. Our next steps are, as Lauren pointed out, we'll have 2 more community meetings. The next will be on sort of concepts, and the third will be about kind of a decided concept. I see Lauren has her hand up. I'm going to unmute her.
I just wanted to ask one quick question, and feel free to put it in the chat if you guys would like. We always try to make sure that we get the word out, and I know that we heard that, you know, getting more folks from the Commonwealth housing to be able to join as well. Are there other places in the community that you guys would suggest that we flyer or that we reach out to that maybe we hadn't, because we always want to be expanding that? And Councilor Breeden, you may have some ideas too, but feel free to email Max or drop things in the chat. Because we do want to make sure that we do get those voices. So please do feel free to do that.
Thank you, Lauren. Hi, I see Dan, you have one more question. Go ahead, Dan.
Yes, thanks. No, it was just to Lauren's response there. You know, it would be great if you worked with the youth worker, that's Boston Housing Authority youth worker. His name's Roe. And perhaps you could have some children answer some survey questions on how they like the park that live in Commonwealth tenants. He organizes the youth up there. So just a thought to answer questions that you just had on that. Thank you.
Thank you. And Dan, if you have that contact for Roe, or if
Yeah.
Councilor Breeden does,
Yes.
that would be wonderful to share with us.
Yep,
Good idea.
we have it.
Perfect.
Thanks.
Well, thank you again. I hope you all have a wonderful evening, and I hope to see you again soon.
Thank you.